Welcome back to Machines Inc. and Jeep Winter Build Series, Episode 2. Welcome back to the channel, guys, and to part 2 of our Jeep Winter Build Series. So in the first part of the series, we went ahead and stripped off our old front 3-link, cleaned up the frame, and installed frame stiffeners. And that was all in preparation for our new 3-link that we're going to be putting on. So this is a 3-link long arm from Iron Rock Off-Road. A buddy of mine, Kerry, took this off of his Jeep, got it from him for a good price, and honestly, this only has probably 2 or 3 wheel-in trips on it. So all the bushings are in great shape, everything's in great shape, a couple small scratches, but who cares? We're going to scratch it up anyways. So this 3-link from Iron Rock Off-Road is a great option. Not only is the price awesome, but also it's just feature packed. Honestly, if I was going to build a 3-link, this would be exactly how I'd set it up. So first off, we're going to start off with the Crossmember here. It's a super beefy Crossmember that holds our brackets for the link mounts, as well as where it's going to attach to the frame. The great part about this Crossmember is that the center portion is actually removable. So we can drop the transmission out of the way while still keeping the links and front axle in place, which is awesome for serviceability. Past that, going on to the links here, all the links on the Crossmember side are going to have flex joints on them. So flex joints are similar to a Heim where they have mostly unrestricted movement, but since they do have poly bushings on either side of that uniball that moves, not only can we grease it and it's serviceable, but also it reduces a little bit of vibration coming from the axle and suspension into the chassis to make for a little bit smoother ride. So definitely prefer that for a street and off-road vehicle versus a traditional Heim. Then coming down to links, these links are made out of 2-inch DOM quarter wall tubing. That's pretty standard for any rock crawler, and especially for this lightweight Jeep is going to be plenty beefy enough for us. And then at the axle side of these links is actually just a standard rubber bushing. And the reason they do a rubber bushing on this end is to keep the links oriented in the direction we want them to. You can see there's a little bit of a bend in the link here, and what that's to allow for is for tire clearance for you to get full lock-to-lock steering. So if we didn't have this solid style bushing on one end, the arms would be able to droop to where that bend would be in the wrong direction. Might scrub into the tire, wouldn't have as much clearance, so on and so forth. So before we go ahead and toss this on the car, we do have a little bit of prep work. First, I'm going to go ahead and pop these links off just to make it a little bit easier to work with this Crossmember. Then on the Crossmember end, I'm going to go ahead and clean off some of the powder coating so we have it prepped and ready to be able to tack and then weld onto the unibody or our new welded on frame stiffeners. So let's go ahead and jump into it and get this 3-link installed. Alright, so next thing up for prepping is we're going to go ahead and drill out this upper control arm to a little bit larger bolt hole size. The side that mounts to the axle side, traditionally for Jeeps I believe is a 9/16 bolt, but I actually replaced that joint with a flex joint from Iron Rock Off-Road welded onto the axle truss. It's one of my first videos. I'll put a link to that down below. But the bolt hole size on that flex joint is actually a 1/2 inch, so we're gonna go ahead and drill this out to a 1/2 inch so it'll be ready to mate up as soon as we get it bolted on. We're gonna start off, get a little bit of cutting fluid on the drill bit so we can make these drill bits last a little bit longer. And then after drilling through that, we're gonna come back and just clean it up real quick to make sure we don't have any burrs or sharp edges on there. So to come back and clean these up, I don't have a deburring tool, but something that does work great is a step bit. Generally just when it's hitting that next step, starts to kind of do a little bit of a deburring on there. Perfect, one side done. Alright, and our upper link is all ready to roll. Alright, so now we're ready to go and throw this cross member on here. What I'm going to start with is jacking it up and aligning the transmission bolt holes first. Then once we get it up a little bit closer to the frame, I'm actually going to use some of the old bolts off of the old cross member just and actually bolt it up to the frame for now to go ahead and align it where I want, and that'll help hold it up into place. And when we get it finally aligned, dialed in, totally straight, we'll go ahead and tack it all together. Alright, so now that we've got the cross member up here, went ahead and put one bolt on each side in the center bolt hole just to be able to support the cross member so we can go ahead and pull this jack out of the way. So next up what we want to do is I want to measure to make sure that we have this cross member perfectly straight side to side on the frame rails. Some people might measure off points on the frame to be able to line up this cross member. Realistically, some of those holes might not line up perfectly, they might not always be symmetrical. And the biggest thing that we're looking to do is actually square the axles. If the axles are square, the body could be totally cattywampus and off in a different corner and it really wouldn't matter, but we'd still get the driving characteristics that we want. So how I'm going to measure this to line everything up is I'm going to measure from the front bolt of the rear leaf springs up to the cross member on both sides and make sure that we have that equal. That way, that should ensure that we have the cross member completely parallel to the rear axle, and then that should line us up perfectly to be able to have the front axle parallel to the rear. Alright, so how we're going to measure this is I've already gone ahead and lined up where the bolt hole is for the front spring eye, and I've actually lined it up and marked with a Sharpie on the bottom of the frame exactly where that is. That's just going to make measuring this a little bit easier. So this side we have exactly 35 3/4, and we'll go ahead and go check the other side. So on this side we have about 35.5, so we need to go ahead and knock this side back a little bit to get it lined up. Alright, so after beating it back and forth, I think we got it lined up, so we'll do one last measurement. So we got 35.5 exactly on that end, and 35.5 exactly on that end. So next, we're just going to go back and tighten these bolts fully, and we'll recheck one more time, and then after that, we'll go ahead and tack it on and then weld it all together. Alright, so getting ready to weld on this, I'm just cleaning up my gun a little bit real quick. I'm going to go ahead and replace the disposable tip on it as well, because that was pretty much roached after welding on all these frame stiffeners. So we're just going to get this cleaned up, throw a new tip on it. And then what I'm going to do before I go ahead and tack on this cross member, I'm actually going to also jack it up with the jack just to get it as close and tight to the frame as possible. Get a couple hot tacks on there, then I can remove those bolts, remove the jack out of the way, and get to welding this whole thing up. Alright guys, so we've got this crossmember all welded up, and I am totally stoked because that means it is time to start assembling this 3-link. So we're going to go ahead and throw these links all on here. We're going to go ahead and square the axles up front to rear, set up caster, all those things. I'm not going to bore you guys with too many details on setting up this alignment, but if you do want to know how to do an alignment on your car at home, Nate from Dirt Lifestyle, he's one of my favorite YouTubers by far. He has an amazing video that goes really into detail on how to do a 4-wheel drive alignment at your house. So I will drop a link below to that in the description so you guys can go check that out if you want to know how to align your 4-wheel drive at home. But on my end, we're just going to go ahead and slam this thing together and you guys can follow along. Another issue we're running into now is that this upper bolt is actually, the drive shaft is in the way. So I either need to unbolt one end of the drive shaft or to move it out of the way or possibly flex the axle. I don't think flexing the axle is going to work great since I don't have the rest of the links on. So we might be removing the drive shaft. Alright, now we got the drive shaft loose, we got plenty of room to get this built up in here. Alright, so we've got our links bolted on here. Went ahead and tightened up the portion that mounts the crossmember. Since that is a flex joint, we can go ahead and tighten that any orientation since it can move freely. The side that goes on the axle, since that's a rubber bushing, we're not going to tighten that until the vehicle's sitting down on its own weight. But we are going to go ahead and set it up on the coils, so that way we can test caster, adjust that, tighten up that upper link, finally tighten up the bottom links, and we will be ready to flex this thing out and test for clearance. Now that we got the Jeep on its own weight, we want to go ahead and level it out. So we're going to measure how high the bottom of the axle tube on the rear axle is off the ground. Then we're going to set up the jack stands in the front to mimic that so we can get the vehicle level, and then we can go on with going ahead and aligning everything. Alright, so we already got the axle kind of squared up how we want it. Last thing we're going to do is just double check caster. For that, you want to measure off of the inner seat of the axle right here. And normally we just use a little digital angle finder like these guys, not super expensive. And you're just going to click it right on the inner seat like this. And we're looking right over 7 degrees, which is exactly what we were looking for with caster. So now that it's sitting on its own weight, we can go ahead and tighten up all the rest of the bolts for these link arms, and we are done installing this 3-link. All right, guys, so I'm absolutely stoked that we got this 3-link on there. We got it all dialed in and ready to go. I'm really excited to take it out on the road eventually and see how it handles, hopefully way better than it did before. But this is going to go ahead and end episode 2 of the Jeep Winter Build series. Episode 3, I think we're going to come in and do a little bit more in detail video on how to flex and trim so you don't have any rubbing on the trail. That's one thing I don't see a lot of people talk about, and it's not hard to do, but I want to kind of give a step-by-step how to do that. So I think episode 3 is going to be a full video just based on flexing everything out and checking clearances on the front of the vehicle and showing you guys how to trim everything up out of the way. And then after that, we will move on to whatever we're going to do with the floors. I've gotten a lot of replaced floor plans and both sides, so I need a few more suggestions here. Probably still kind of leaning towards both sides, but like I said, you guys let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions on this install, maybe something that I didn't cover because I did gloss over it pretty quick, definitely let me know in the comments as well. If you like today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you guys want to follow me on Instagram, I am not Jake from State Farm. You can check that out in my About section on my channel. And subscribe to the channel if you guys want to see some more. And as always, thanks for watching.